guys, it's Laura at the Painted Chair here. We're going to talk today about our take-home kits for clocks. Clocks are a little bit specific as far as what they require and the steps involved, so I'm just going to go through some of that with you today and talk about what's included in your kit. So with your kit, you will get a clock mechanism. Instructions are on the back on how to put those on. You're going to get 2 hangers. The hangers will go on these backs here to hang your clock. You're going to get a push pin, sponges, and one of our brushes. And if you're going to do the staining technique, which I'm going to show now, you're going to want to have some baby wipes handy, some scissors handy, and just a large workspace that you possibly could get paint on. So if you want to put a covering on your table, that would be advisable. So what I'm going to do right now with this clock is get started doing some staining. So obviously your kit's going to include the clock and stencils. If you get the monogram clock, there's going to be 2 separate stencils, and we're going to go over how to put those stencils on. So we grab 2 baby wipes, we kind of wad them up in our hands. We usually always stain with dark brown paint to create a faux stain. We do this with baby wipes and paint, and we're just rubbing that in. So I like to use quite a bit of paint. If we find that there's little divots in the board, little imperfections, we like to push the paint right in there. And you can see I'm kind of doing one board at a time. I'm going to be doing my sides too. And this is kind of what it looks like as you're staining. So what this is going to do is just give you a lot of dimension and texture when you put your light color over this. Just a little bit of this dark color underneath is going to pop and really make your clock look nice. So what I'm going to do is finish staining this, and then I'm going to dry it. So give it a few minutes under a hair dryer, or 10 or 15 minutes, just letting it sit before you proceed to the next step. And I'll be right back with you guys. So we're back. We've got our clock here, and I've hair dried it, so it's all nice and dry to the touch. I've done my edges all the way around. They're actually going to stay brown. We are not going to use the white on our edges. We're going to keep them dark. So the next thing you're going to want to do is have your top base color, which we're using an antique white here, and a brush. The one thing I forgot to mention that's going to be in a clock kit is a little bit of wax. It'll come in a baggie like this. So what we're going to do with the wax, we want to show a little bit of this dark paint, a little bit more on our plank lines. So it really accentuates that this is kind of a shiplap style clock, which is so popular. And if you've looked at any of our completed clocks, you'll notice that you can see the plank lines a little bit more. And how that's achieved is by taking this little piece of wax and just running it across the plank line. We're just going one time across. Wax is really potent. We don't want to use too much pressure. Just kind of keep it along the plank line, just one time across. And we're going to do all the planks. Super easy process. What's going to happen is that the white paint is going to completely cover this up. Not even going to know that we did this step. But when we go to put stencils on and we peel the stencil off, it's going to take just a little bit of paint off at those plank lines and make it look really cool and rustic. So what I do is, if there's any little flecks of the wax, kind of wipe that off. We don't want that getting in the paint. So just a little wipe down. Also, you can see that my hands are a little bit messy. I run around with paint on my hands all day, not a big deal for me. Really the messy part is the staining, which is what I just did. So if you want to wear some gloves while you're doing the staining, it'll make for a little less work cleaning your hands off. We use chalk paint, so it does come off your hands really easily, but you might want to wear gloves on that first staining step. So now we are going to move the wax out of the way, and we're going to start painting. And so we're just getting a little bit of paint on the brush. We're going to start somewhere in our middle area here and kind of work out. We always want to start in the middle and then just kind of feather out to our edges as that brush gets a little bit drier. I like to use more paint and less pressure, so just kind of tickling that board, pulling that paint across. And I like to put about 3 layers of white paint over my dark, get a real crisp white look, but you can stop whenever it feels comfortable for you. Guys, I'm back, and so you can see this is about 3 layers of the chalk paint on the board. You can see it's nice and kind of antique-y looking at the edges. My sides are still brown. And you can see that we've covered up where we've waxed. You can't even tell that it's there yet, but it will come back, I promise. Do make sure that you wash your brush as soon as you're done with it. It is a brush killer if we leave paint to dry on these brushes, and you might want to use it again sometimes. So go ahead and take some time, wash that brush out. So we're going to have both of these stencils ready. But the first one for a monogram clock that we're going to put on the clock is the actual name. Now, some of you guys may have a clock where you've just got one big stencil, and they're a lot easier to put on. Basically, what I tell people, if you're just going to put on the one big stencil, it's best if you do it horizontally. Vertically, let's get that right. So you can do this vertically as well, but definitely, like if you're doing the time spent with family, always stay humble and kind. It's a lot easier to figure out if you're straight or not if you're doing it vertically. So basically, if you were doing one of those bigger stencils, you would just get your 12 up here at the top. That's very important. And make sure it's kind of centered within these planks. Make sure you're evenly spaced up and down and side to side, and you'll have your little writing in the middle here. This is a different stencil, but you get the idea. And then what you would do at that point, if you just had one stencil, would be is you take a big piece of tape, take it all the way across like this, and kind of wrap it without moving it like I did. Wrap it underneath your edges. So we're going to do that too, but we're going to be doing that for our smaller stencil first. So the reason why we do this as 2 stencils is because there is an overlap that looks really pretty on this. And if we tried to do it all in one stencil, we wouldn't get that overlap and it wouldn't be as pretty. Now most people, and I can't say as I blame them, like the horizontal look. So a couple of things to mention, and I'm going to do this so it's facing you. You want your little hole where the clock mechanism goes to be above this center line. So this is reverse for me, so I'm going to have to turn it around, but I'm showing it the way you will have it. So you want the hole just above that center place. So I moved it so that the hole is in the right place for me. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my name stencil and I'm going to pay attention to this top line here. This is the line that we want to be centering. So right now, I want that line just a little bit above this center plank line. See how that line's just a little bit above it? Right now I'm just eyeballing it, but we'll get a little bit more detailed later on. So I would say that's maybe a 1/16 of an inch above the center plank line. And basically that hole where our clock mechanism goes is going to be right where it should be, kind of in this top line. So I'm going to place it like this, kind of eyeballing it at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this stencil over it. So I like to cut out a little extra section here by my 3 and by my 9 so I can really see what I'm doing and really laser focus the precision of how accurate I am. So I'm going to make sure my 12's at the top. I'll say that a lot in this video. That's very important. And make sure that I'm lined up here, top and bottom. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Okay, and now you can kind of see that this isn't very in the middle, so I gotta move it around a little bit. So I'm gonna take this, kind of move it over. We want that line that's above our last name to be the same distance from the number on each side. So we keep playing around with it a little bit to where we want it to be. I think I'm just about there. I don't think I'm going to mess with that anymore. You can kind of see there that I've got just a little bit of space, about the same amount of space on each side of that line above my name. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off. And this is very accurate. I put my finger in that little line and run it across. So I can see that I need to come down just a little bit over here. Run that finger across, run that finger across. And I'm about right at the point that I should be. Now once you've got this stencil exactly where you want it, you're going to take some tape. You can use masking tape or painter's tape, whatever you have at home. Just lay it across like this. Fold it underneath the edge. So the next thing we're going to do is start peeling our stencil. So there's a bottom layer to our stencil and a top layer to our stencil. We want to peel off the bottom first. We don't want any of the blue to come off on our white backing, so if you would see that, you'd want to stick it back down again and make sure that blue is coming up, because that's actually our stencil. So we're going to stick this down now. The tape was just there to kind of keep this in the same place when we got started. The tape really has to go away at this middle point. If we left the tape there, the chances would be pretty good that we'd get some of this white backing stuck in our stencil, and that's pretty hard to get out. So I'm going to peel the rest of the stencil backing off this way. And I'm just smoothing this in with my fingers a little bit. We really don't need to use a squeegee or a credit card because this is very sticky stencil material. So just kind of rubbing it in with your fingers is definitely adequate. So what I'm going to do is push down into my edge a little bit and start rolling this back. I like to roll. You can also pull, but you just want to make sure that you're pulling back, not up like this. And so I'm going to finish peeling this off, and then once I finish peeling this off, you will notice that I take tape and I make a frame around where I'm going to be painting. So I will show you just like this. But basically, you're going to make a little frame of tape all the way around where you're going to be painting, just so we don't need to worry about getting any paint where it's not supposed to be when we start painting on top of this stencil. So I will be right back and we'll get started painting.